another photo mishmash. I'm Christina.
And I'm Toby.
And this is episode 22.
22. Spinning out of control. And now I'm going to play that little clip from the GoPro after it binged off the rock. Boom.
Is that why you're titling this episode that?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because we got a jam-packed episode. So let's shut up with the chitter-chatter and get right into it.
Sounds good. So let's talk a little bit about the week in review. Actually, let's talk about our sponsors first. We have an exciting new sponsor.
Well, yeah, I don't know if we should call it a sponsor, but...
More like a affiliate or partner.
Yeah. Yeah, David and I didn't actually talk about whether or not we wanted to call it partner or affiliate. Let's call it an association, and this is actually really exciting. So a lot of you have been asking about classes, me offering classes or hands-on, and that is something I'd love to do and is something in the plan for the future. But in the meantime, I have a really neat opportunity to share with you all, and that is an association with David McKay and McKay Live. And he and his wife run these photo tours, photo classes, and photo safaris all over the world. And they're just amazing. And here's what's awesome about them. They take you to these gorgeous locations that are going to allow you to take some beautiful photos. And you think, well, wait a second, what if I don't know what I'm doing? Step 2, they are photography teachers and really good photography teachers. And one of the things I've liked from watching his videos and talking to him is he has a very similar approach to mine. The kind of that friendly, no wrong questions, let us get you started, let's get making nice pictures approach. And so you have that support in these beautiful locations. And of course, all of the kind of logistics are coordinated and taken care of. So you don't have to necessarily worry about all of that. And definitely me, but we're working on are going to be going along on his just announced Yellowstone in Winter tour in January of 2015. Now, I'm going to put a link right down below this video, and I want you to go check out his other tours. Just really amazing opportunities and amazing places. And I think some folks might look at them and look at that price and go, ouch.
You probably would be spending about the same amount planning a vacation like that on your own when you take into account, all the expenses. Right. And you wouldn't be getting any instructions. So. That's
right. Yep. So it's this neat dual opportunity, and I was going to say that compared to the cost of similar trips, actually it's a really good deal. So as I said, a link down below, and I'll be talking a lot more about this, but I'm really excited about the Yellowstone tour. I will, of course, be bringing you more information, as I said, and bringing you information on that trip. So, maybe that's too short notice. A lot of times these planning and things like that, I know you have vacation time and stuff like that, you have to start planning pretty far ahead, but there are more international trips coming up, some amazing locations, Greece, New Zealand, Tanzania. Some of those are already sold out. They sell out very quickly because the group size is small. They keep it very small, so you're not in this giant group in the back like, how do I take a picture over here? No, you've got hands-on opportunity with the folks, so it's really nice. So that's exciting. More information coming very soon. Take a moment to check out the link down below. Next.
Great. So you put out you set up a newsletter this past week.
Well, no, I am relaunching the mechanism for the newsletter. I'm no longer using a free service, so I think that'll be some incentive to actually do it. So there's a link to sign up for that newsletter down below, and here's a hint of why you may want to. A giveaway coming soon. Newsletter subscribers only. That's right. So even if you already follow on Facebook, even if you already subscribe on YouTube, go ahead and take a moment to go ahead and subscribe to this newsletter. We're going to be putting out some new content through the newsletter, and I'm just excited to have another venue for reaching you all.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, let's get to the week in review now. You asked people about their preferred focal lengths, but I couldn't open the Google Doc that you put in the...
I probably didn't share it with you so nicely.
You did not.
So if you remember, this is all part of the 10 to 18 review. Can you hand me that one lens that is there? Great. All right, so we reviewed the 10-18 this week, this nice new little STM lens from Canon. I like it. It's nice, $299. It's hard to get critical of this lens. Go watch my full review if you're interested in more. I will have coming very soon, we hand me the box and the other lens. We originally were sitting on either side, so I was going to grab those things, but then Christina decided that this side was better for you all.
This is my good side.
I don't know. You did tell me to switch places with you. Why?
I just feel more comfortable on this side.
Oh, okay. So how does that 10-18 stack up against something like the Tokina 11-16 f2.8? Well, this is going to be better. I haven't done direct side-by-side yet. I'll have that out for you next week. But, you know, this is also almost twice the price. And the Canon 10-22 f3.5 to 4.5 USM. Comparisons coming on those in the coming week. So that was a little bit of week in review slash week ahead.
And that is thanks to the folks at B&H, right?
That is thanks to the folks at B&H who are awesome to be loaning me that stuff. So in the 10-18 review, I asked you all what focal length. There's two different scenic scenes from the top of the fire tower that I took in different directions. And I just was curious what you all thought was the best. Now, these weren't the most scenic, beautiful pictures in the world, but I think they were nicely representative of a good scene. And solidly, I did percentages to make it look like a lot of people voted because there weren't that many votes. But 28% of folks said the 18mm focal length looked best, and 33% said the 35mm focal length looked best. And then we had 14% for the 10mm, and we had just one vote for the 50, which was 4%, one vote for the 70, one vote for the 200. And there was 2 votes for the 14 or 10% roughly. I think that is interesting because, again, I'm kind of on this little bit of a crusade to make sure people understand that you don't necessarily need a wide-angle lens for landscape.
I think it depends on the scene, largely.
Well, yes.
I think this scene isn't that interesting when you go in and... The hills aren't that huge and majestic. I mean, Vermont has pretty hills, but they're not that big. I think the longer focal lengths work when you're, you know, in Utah and you've got like huge snow-capped mountains in the background and you're too far away.
Or the wider focal
lengths?
The
longer focal lengths. Because then you can zoom in and really, you know, not get so much of the landscape and make the mountains look a little bit puny. But for this particular scene, you're trying to capture the fact that you were just surrounded by them. So I think that it makes sense that those focal lengths would be people's favorites.
Yep. Nick asked a good question, real quick, related. Gosh, we can make this a 2-hour podcast based on the content we have in it if we wanted to. He said, what benefits or alternatives of stitching together a couple of shots versus shooting one with a wide-angle lens?
Higher resolution?
Yeah, you're going to get a higher resolution from stitching multiple files together. You know, it's kind of one of those either-or things. Stitching doesn't always work if you've got motion in there. If it's seen with people walking or waves in water, you're not going to be able to stitch that cleanly without doing a good bit of work, cars, things like that. So stitching wouldn't work in those cases. But in a lot of times it does, and you can do stitching nicely and get less distortion than you would with one wide-angle lens. But I also found I did do one stitched of 3 at 10, I think, and it looks like we're up in the atmosphere because of the curvature in the in Photoshop after it stitched them together. And I didn't correct for that. I just left it in there.
Yeah,
I corrected it a little bit.
You can get a lot of distortion, especially when using wide zoom or wide angle lenses.
Yeah. So that's good.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily need, but as Christina said, it really depends on this kind of scenery.
The situation.
Yep.
So, do-it-all lenses. William Hall had a question about ISO. This is kind of a follow-up that you wanted to go over.
Well, these are 2 separate things. The do-it-all lenses. So right now, camera 2 is using the Tamron 16-300. Also, thanks to the fine folks at B&H for loaning that out. And it's certainly convenient. I'll have a full review of that in the next week or 2. it's very convenient. And typically, I've talked about this a little bit before, typically I'm not a huge fan of do-it-all lenses. We're not going to show up at a wedding with any of the do-it-all lenses currently on the market, including this one.
Right.
But for vacation and around town, they're really convenient. You make some sacrifices in image quality. I've seen the chromatic aberration is pretty noticeable. Sharpness, it's not bad. And it's an amazing range, starting at 16, 2 millimeters wider than kit. It actually is that, again, similar to the 10 to 18, doesn't sound like a whole lot of range, but it is a significant difference there. So we'll be talking more about that, but you can see that the difference looks a little, it's noticeable, but we're also shooting it on the 70D versus the 5D Mark III. So more about that. Now William's question, this is kind of a follow-up to ISO and aperture. I opened it and I have a screenshot of the question right here. So we talked a lot about priority modes last week and what the difference was between shooting in like full manual or aperture priority. And William said he used to use manual with auto ISO. So basically you are setting the shutter speed and the aperture and you're letting the camera decide on the ISO. The problem with that though, and I've noticed this too, is it removes your exposure compensation. Because your top dial is doing your shutter speed, your back dial, or if you're T5i or something, hold down the button. Those things are controlling that, and you've removed your ability to say, I want this to be a half stop overexposed or underexposed. You are stuck at what the camera thinks is central exposure. And so that's annoying.
Yeah.
He also asked about sometimes, and this is one of the things we've said, it can be dangerous with the priority modes, especially AV, is that you can get a shutter speed slow enough that you get blur if you're not paying attention. Because suddenly you swing the camera over here and it thinks that it needs to have a 1/20th of a second shutter speed to get a proper exposure, or to get the exposure you've asked for. And you suddenly have motion blur. You can, on some cameras, set a minimum shutter speed. Say, do not go below this amount. And the 70D does that. The T5i does not. The 70D does. Nikon has that. I don't remember if they have it on the D5300, but so that's one way to avoid that on some of those cameras. But we just wanted to point out that, and somebody else had pointed out that they do that on their Pentax, that they put auto ISO on and then control the other bits. I don't know on the Pentax if it allows any kind of exposure compensation in addition to that. Anybody know? Can you tell me?
Tell us in the comments. So last week we kind of, we were about to start talking about it, but then we decided to put it off until today. This topic about boxes. And I said I had very strong opinions about that.
Oh, well, we asked people. We said, do you keep your boxes?
Yeah, so did you find anything interesting?
Everybody keeps their boxes.
Oh, yeah.
Until they run out of storage space. That was a comment. We had a couple of comments that people keep their boxes. Paul, I think it said, you know, he keeps the ones that he knows he's going to keep. I was like, well, Paul, how do you know that for sure? I think it was Paul.
What does it mean that he knows he's going to keep?
Well,
I don't understand that.
I know, it's giving him a little bit of a hard time.
If you're keeping them, if you're keeping them, then why would you keep the boxes?
Right. So, you know, there are some products that you really do know that you're going to keep for a long period of time.
Right, but why would you keep the box if you're going to keep it for a really long time?
No, sorry, he said he gets rid of the boxes.
That he knows he's going to keep. Yeah. Okay, here's what I think.
Yeah.
And this is one thing that I discovered a couple years ago when I bought the 85-1 II. And I bought it used off of Amazon. And it didn't come in the original box. It came in another box. It didn't even have the warranty paper or anything. And, you know, I basically just, it was listed as being in good condition. And Amazon has pretty good, you know, I guess protection, mm-hmm. customer protection or buyer protection. So I bought it and I didn't really know what to expect. It came in not the original box. I opened it. It was well packaged. I looked at it. It looked perfect. Worked perfectly. Fast forward 2 years later, I still have it. Still works awesome. We've dropped it a couple of times, but that wasn't, you know. And the Elements still is great. And it didn't come in a box. And did I pay less money because it didn't come in a box? No. It was the same. Well, I feel like that decreases the value. Like
Yes.
we have this assumption
Agreed.
that it decreases the value if you don't have the original box. Like, it's just a friggin' box. That's all it is. I mean, you can easily find another box that fits the lens and clearly and package it nicely and still transport it and still use it. And yeah, I didn't think about it not having the original box, and I was glad because now I don't have an 85-1.2 box to keep around, like with everything else.
You might be sad when you get rid of it.
I don't think so.
She'll be buried with
I
that
probably won't. And you know what? I will probably sell it on Fred Miranda, and people there aren't, too like picky about boxes. I think keeping boxes is silly, frankly. I really do. Some news. Canon commemorated the 25th anniversary of the EOS 1 or EOS 1 series, the flagship model lineup of the company's EOS.
The flagship model?
The flagship.
Flagship.
The flagship model lineup. Yeah, so that's a really long time, huh?
It is a really long time. So this is not that camera. This is a successor to that. So 25 years since the flagship DSLR digital, well, that's what D is in SLR. This is one that I rescued out of somebody's trash pile when I used to work at Marlboro. 2 megapixels. This honking thing could only produce 2 megapixels. And so the question of the week is, this one here, March 1998. So we're talking just over 16 years old. What do you think will be the megapixel amounts and the main
features will it have?
Selling features
of a camera 15 years from now?
15 to 25 years from now. Now we had, we did kind of ask a similar question a few months ago in a podcast, and one person wrote in and said, voice command. And I was thinking about that the other night in that wedding we shot during the reception. The band was really noisy. We borrowed earplugs from the videographer. Well, not borrowed, but he gave us some clean earplugs. And I thought, trying to command my camera via voice in a situation like that would not be optimal. But maybe it can read your brainwaves.
Yeah, maybe you can install a microchip in your brain and you can just like communicate.
How many of you are dedicated enough to photography that you would elect to have a microchip embedded in your brain?
I think it would just be technology that if you were to embed a microchip in your brain, you wouldn't just be able to talk to your camera. You'd be able to talk to all of your devices that way. So that's the only way I would do it, not just talk to my camera. That seems a little...
Could you check in with your fridge and see if there's milk in it?
Sure.
Hasn't that been like the thing that everybody's been talking about, the smart connected fridge forever?
Has it? I had never heard about it until you just mentioned it a second ago.
Yeah, they got the ones where you read the little barcode.
I don't ever think about that. I just know that we're running low on milk.
We only have one egg left. I want it to be able to feel the weight of the egg carton in the fridge and be like, you need to get eggs if you want a good breakfast.
I guess if you're at the I don't know. I just feel like if I'm not sure about eggs, I just get eggs. And that's it.
Off topic.
Because we'll use them.
One of the things, though, that is interesting that ties this in with rumors that we're getting of the 7D Mark II, which, gosh, we've been rumored forever. It does seem like maybe August we may hear something more concrete. But early rumors are saying, or early to mid rumors, because we've had rumors for a while now, that it will notice there's no mode dial on here. And the 7D Mark II is possibly going to ditch the mode dial as well. What there is a button you can hold down and rotate this little dial to switch your mode. I think that's interesting. This D2000 saved onto these PCMI cards. This one is a whopping 160 megabytes. So 2 megapixels, 160 megabytes.
Cool.
Neat.
So let's talk a little bit about the FZ1000 release. And this is important for a couple of reasons. One, because you got to find out about it before everyone else did.
I was passed some information.
For a lot of people.
While the camera information was still embargoed, so that was exciting. That allowed me to build up the blog post and have it ready to be published at midnight, as many other places did too, like The Verge and DP Review, and all of these places get all of this information prior to. But it was, you know, it was fun to be part of that group. You know, I think this also ties in with a camera 15 years ago. Here we now have a point and shoot capable of shooting 4K video. We had to dial back our excitement a little bit because you've got, what, the Samsung Galaxy S5 that can shoot 4K video, but this is on
That's a really tiny sensor though.
Yes, that's right.
Teeny tiny.
And this is on a 1-inch sensor, which is almost the same size as a Micro Four Thirds, just a little bit smaller. And this is for less than $1,000. Really nice connectivity, super zoom.
So here again, we go back to that conversation of like, how many megapixels can you cram into a tiny sensor before like they're completely useless? So what's the point of cramming, you know, 4,000 pixels into a sensor, or I guess just on one side? I mean, is the quality going to be that awesome? It's just these are literally just pixels.
Well, but
in a tiny sensor.
Right, but remember, so this is a 20 megapixel sensor, 1 inch, 20 megapixels.
Right.
And 4K is 8 megapixels, roughly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, you know, it's not even using, you could say that it's not even using the full sensor. And then we're getting into areas that I'm not an expert in. And this is, I'm going to do more research because I'll be talking about the GH4 next week and how that reads off. There's, for a lot of these 4K cameras, there's different ways that it reads this information off the sensor.
Right, and so it may just be that the actual sensor itself is just a higher quality sensor, which actually would be, you know,
that's true.
If you're cramming lots of megapixels into a high quality sensor, then that's different.
Right, and this ties into one of our reader questions about all of the kind of high-end pro cameras, 16 megapixels, 20 megapixels max, and they have really big, well, full-frame sensors. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that in the reader question.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, FZ1000 comes out at the end of July. I hope to have my hands on it for a review. I think it's interesting. It's, you know, head-to-head versus the Sony RX10, which is selling well, but about $400 more, and it gives you that 4K, plus a lot more zoom. We'll see.
Yeah. So Adobe is kind of teasing out the new features that it will release with the announcement and release of the newest version of Adobe Creative Cloud. Creative Cloud.
Yep.
So one of the new features, or one of the features that they're kind of they've announced, comes with Photoshop, and it is called the Focus Selection Tool. And this is similar to their content-aware tools. I don't know if you're familiar with content-aware scale or content-aware fill, which are really, really just mind-blowingly helpful tools. They're like magic almost when you use them.
They can be, when they work right.
When they work right. So the idea behind this is that Photoshop will be able to intelligently make a selection based on the pixels in an image that are in focus. So in this video, the person walks you through an image of a person, of a man.
A portrait.
It's a portrait, yeah, of a man, I believe, in a city, and you know, she just clicks on the.
I'll run this video. You don't have to describe it fully, but
so Photoshop makes a selection around the person perfectly, and she inverts the selection and is able to change the color and saturation of the background. So it looks really cool. Just that it's, you know, just for it, because I don't know if you've ever tried to. Like cut something out of a background or just like Photoshop it into something different, but
which is it's pretty commonly you need to do.
Right? Yeah. Well,
select your
if you're
subject.
doing like composites and stuff, you know, you have to like zoom in and with the pen tool. I mean, there's many different ways, but they're super complicated, very time consuming. So this hopefully will cut that time down, you know, into a very, very tiny fraction of the time that it used to take. So it's really cool. I wouldn't probably use it very often just because I don't do composite images anymore. But yeah, it's very promising too. I'm excited to see what else.
There aren't times where you, let's say you have your bride, you've photographed her with your 85-1.2, so she's clearly in focus. The background is out of focus, which would allow this feature to work very well. There aren't times where you do adjustments to just the background or just her separate?
No. I mean, that's what a brush is for. You don't ever really want to do, yeah, that's super. This is just for like, this is if you're going to adjust the entire background, which I don't really ever do.
Right.
Yeah.
And you mentioned content-aware fill. For those who don't know, it's pretty magical, and this was a feature 2 releases ago, I believe. It's been around now for 2 releases. Let's say you have a rock in a big field of wildflowers and it's ugly, or a sign or something. You can select that and then say content-aware fill. Photoshop will look at the surrounding area and decide what it should fill in your selection with. Basically, wildflowers. It can be quite magical when it works well. There are times where it works horribly.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see if this tool is like that.
So Apple made some really promising announcements as well this week or last week.
I was going to pull up.
Changes that are coming to the camera app in iOS 8. Very, very cool changes.
Well, one of the little changes is they're going to time-lapse mode. It's going to be built into the camera. It's going to be one of those selections down there. No word yet on if you're able to control how often it takes a picture. But I think that's one. And there's a couple, manual exposure adjustments will now be allowed.
Awesome.
You can slide your little finger up and down.
That's really cool. I'm excited about that.
I have to say, I'm a big fan of Android, but many of the reasons I am a big fan of Android seem to be coming in this iOS 8.
Yeah.
To be able to switch the keyboard.
Swift key.
The widgets and control. And here's the big one, the kind of cross connection between apps. I hate it when I pick up your phone and I want to just share a picture out to Dropbox. It's so complicated. You got to go into Dropbox and pull it. Whereas on Android, you get that share menu that every time you add a new program ends up on that share menu if it allows that. And then you just say, boom, take this. And it's just so fast. It's so nice. But all of that's coming in iOS 8. So that's exciting. And I mentioned Dropbox. I love Dropbox. But, you know, Apple's very good at taking other people's stuff and then being like, hey, look, we figured out how to do this. This whole iCloud photo library. Now, sounds very Dropbox-ish and Lightroom-ish too, with this Lightroom mobile, and so to speak. Any pictures you take on any of your iOS devices will all be shared up to the cloud. And I was pulling up the space sizes. They're going to give you a lot more space. It'll even accept raw images. You'll be able to make edits and tweaks, and that's another thing that's coming in the photo app for iOS 8 is a much more Snapseed, Google Photo editing capabilities. All of the changes are non-destructive. Let's say you make a change on your iPhone of one picture and you share it out with mom. Later on, you pick up your iPad or you're sitting in front of your desktop and you can pull that image back up. The changes you made are there. You can throw those away and make new changes. So that's pretty snazzy. And what I'm pulling up right now is the spacing, the amount you're going to be able to buy more space. I think that's all the major ones is, that I just hit on there is, oh, it's the same thing. Where's the little, I can't find it right now. Oh, smart composition. It's going to straighten the app for you, which is pretty or straighten the picture for you.
Yep. So I'm really excited to get it.
Yeah, in the fall.
Yeah.
And I'm a little jealous, but I'll be okay. I'll be all right. Yeah, I don't know where they're spacing. It's reasonable though. It's like, you know, it's the 5 gigabytes free still, I think, and the photos now do count against that. But I might not be right about that, so I'm not going to say.
Okay.
But lots more space for reasonable amounts, similar to Dropbox, which I love, and the Google Drive.
So you might have to grab the laptop back because we're going to move into our discussion segment, and the title of this article that we're going to talk about is 10 things a photographer should never do while photographing a wedding. So
that's right. I thought this would be fun to go through these and share. I started reading some of the comments, but
sounds like
it very quickly
policing behavior
devolves into it things. Yeah,
it sounds like a little bit like link bait, but whatever. We'll talk about it.
Yeah. Number 10, do not dance at the wedding. Now,
I disagree with that. I mean, to an extent, like, you know, if I'm at a wedding, and I like the music and I feel like bobbing my head around.
She loves Call Me Maybe.
You love Call Me Maybe.
I do love Call Me Maybe. I don't know why. It's fun.
So I'm gonna like I'm not gonna be a statue and just like be boring.
A stick in the mud.
Sure. You know, like I'm gonna try to have a little bit of fun. I think guests enjoy that. Some people have come up to me and asked me if I want to dance. Not like, do you want to dance with me? But like, they'll be like, do you want me to hold your camera and you go dance? And I politely decline because I'm a little too shy for that. But
well, you're there to do a job.
Right, exactly, yeah. Right. So definitely don't. I mean, you can do what you want. There was one wedding where I was second shooting and they were doing that thing where they put a bottle in the center of the dance floor and they spin it around, which they did at the last wedding. Yeah. But I've seen it happen before.
And whoever the bottle points to has to come out and dance.
Yeah, and one time it pointed at me and everybody was just looking at me like expecting me to come dance. And I should have done it in retrospect because it probably would have been funny and everybody would have enjoyed it and I probably would have enjoyed myself. And I didn't because I was too shy and I was like, no, I have to be a professional. And I think that just probably, you know, came off as just like boring. So anyway,
it's hard to say.
Do what you want.
There could have been somebody in the crowd considering. Well, you were second shooting, but I was going to say considering hiring you.
And
we'll come back to that.
And if they don't want to hire me because I dance, then I don't want them as a client in the first place.
Well, there's like the dancing.
Well, yeah,
and then there's like dancing. I think that's fine. Standing, you know, enjoying, bopping your head.
I mean, definitely don't grind up on people if that's what you meant by the first type of dancing.
That was my
okay.
My PG version.
I don't do that anyway. So.
Okay. Number 9. Guys only tip. Do not refer to the bride, bridesmaids, mother of the bride, grandmother or the bride, or basically any female at the wedding as beautiful. Oh. That is not to say you cannot tell them they look beautiful, but don't say things like move over here, beautiful, take a step to the right, beautiful, lift your chin a little bit, beautiful.
Wait, anybody does that?
I know. That's one of those things that I read that and I was like, ew.
Really? I'm sure some people do that and it's creepy.
Yeah. It's not good. I do often tell the bride she looks beautiful. They do. But that's just a one-time thing and it's not calling them beautiful. And I also tell the gentlemen they look sharp. They often do. They always do as well.
The last wedding, you must have been so sincere in your compliment that the groom felt like he had to tell me that in a good way. He was just like, so, I don't know, he just really enjoyed being complimented by him. He was like...
He looked good, Anthony.
He was like...
He was sharp.
Toby told me that, I don't normally say this, but you look like really good, man.
What I said was,
like, really good.
I usually tell the grooms they look good because you all do look good. But I said, Anthony, you look sharp.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah. So, and it's nice. I also think it's nice. There's a benefit to hearing from that, hearing the photographer say that. I think it gives them a little bit of confidence and comfortability in front of the camera. Oh, this guy thinks I look good. He must be getting good pictures. That's a good thing. You don't want them. Anything you can do to unshy them or make them feel more uncomfortable. Do not, number 8, under any circumstances, take your shoes off.
I definitely did that a couple weddings ago when I was second shooting, and actually apologized to the lead photographer. I had the most god-awful blisters that I've ever had. They were so painful that I was more comfortable walking on prickly gravel than I was wearing those shoes. And he didn't care, because this is Vermont and nobody cares. So
right.
I did put them inside when I went back into the reception hall and just sucked it up though. But I wasn't running around like carrying lights. Right. In that case, I couldn't have done it. Yeah. It was too much.
And somebody in the comments pointed out that there are times where you want to climb up on something.
Yeah.
And it's acceptable and actually preferred to take your shoes off in that case usually. You should have clean socks on. I mean, you should be dressed appropriately to be able to manage all of these things. Do not feel the need to recite every entry from the Urban Dictionary to establish a cool wedding photog reputation. Fab, dude, bro, delish, gorge.
Who does this?
Yeah,
I feel like they just made that up and they think
maybe
like,
people
oh,
in California.
No.
What was the jelly? The light is jelly. That's different.
It's like jelly. He described it like jelly, and I can definitely see that in some situations. I don't think that was like a cool thing to say. It's just like...
I feel a little cool to say that the light is jelly. Talking about when the light is
It's not the light. He didn't say the light is jelly. He said the light, it looked like jelly.
Okay. All right. I'll take that. Number 6, do not say this is only the third wedding I've photographed, so I'm a little nervous.
Yeah, don't ever say that.
No, I think it's okay to be completely honest with how many weddings you've shot. If somebody asks, you don't want to lie.
Well, yeah. But don't say I'm a little nervous. Yeah. Like, don't follow it up by I'm a little
definitely, nervous. You want to exude confidence. As soon as you it's like they can smell fear.
Or they can hear it.
They smell nervousness. Right, yeah. So that's part of being a wedding photographer, is put on that brave face and saying, when the bride says, hey, can we take this picture over here on this rickety old dock? And you say, oh, yeah. No,
and then the party actually falls
right,
in.
No. So. It's also being able to say, you know what? I don't think that's the best idea.
Yeah, just own it.
Do not share technical problems with the wedding party. I think 5 and 6 kind of belong together. So basically
No, you know what? It's not bad to say, look, we're having, like, if your camera's not working, you shouldn't just, like, keep shooting because obviously you have to deal with the problem. I think it's totally fine to acknowledge, like, oh, just give us a second while we, like, fix this. You know, our camera's being silly, goofy, whatever. Just, you know, relax for a couple minutes and people are fine.
Right.
Again, it's all about attitude. It's how you present it.
Yeah. Well, I think in one of those cases, we've talked about this before, is having backups. I think we've had technical issues with flashes before, just losing their connection to each other. And often in that case, I hand you a different one, you keep shooting, I figure out what the issue is, and then we switch back when we got it working.
Or occasionally we just like need to spend 5 minutes figuring out what the problem is, and you just have to tell them that. You know, at the end of the day, if you're doing a good job, people are still going to appreciate it. You know, your hard work. So.
Number 4, do not drink alcoholic beverages. I would say that at least...
It's pretty obvious.
Once, yeah, it is pretty obvious. There's no. And somebody in the comments said, oh, I always have a glass or 2 of wine with dinner, and I'm totally fine. And as many people pointed out, and exactly what I think is, somebody sees you drinking, and then let's say later on in the night, something happens, and it doesn't get covered, and it does not matter at all if those drinks back then had anything to do with stuff that goes down later. Or let's say 2 months later they get their pictures and they're like, we don't really like our pictures. And then Aunt Jane is like, she was drinking at the wedding. You have just
That's how Aunt Jane talks, you guys.
You have just set yourself up for a world of hurt. Glass of water, get yourself a Coke if you want.
It's hard, you know, I mean...
Is it?
Well, it's like... No. Okay, it isn't hard.
All I want to do is drink.
No, that's not true. Because actually, it is. This might not sound awesome, like all that great, but it is kind of amusing to like be the only sober person at night when like everybody's interacting with you and they're wasted. It's a little bit amusing to see. I mean, I'm sure we've all experienced it being like Dee Dee or whatever at some point in our lives, but yeah, I mean, it's a lot of people have offered stuff to me at the very beginning. You know, the only time I think that I've had anything alcoholic to drink at a wedding is when there was like this much champagne in a glass at the dinner table, and I drank it, and then was it
your own, or was it just somebody left there?
Oh, it was my own.
Oh, okay.
We were seated at a table.
Okay.
And I actually was second shooting, and the lead photographer drank, so I was like, okay, if you drink, I can drink. But otherwise, I wouldn't have done it, because, but I mean, it was a teeny tiny bit, and I refused anything more, so, yeah. I mean,
we're offered all the time. And in sincerity, not like trying to trap us.
Right,
They just want us to have fun, too.
No, I think sometimes it is a trap. I really do.
Do you?
Yeah. There was one time...
Just say no.
Yeah.
Just say no, kids.
Yeah. There's one recent wedding we were offered weed. We were like, really? We're definitely working.
Their reason was they wondered if we needed
a second wind.
An artistic second wind.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
No.
Thanks, but no thanks.
Anyway.
Do not fuss with the wedding coordinator. And fuss, I think, is like their nice word for saying, like, don't mess with the wedding coordinator. And their point being, wedding coordinators know people and are the ones who very might likely recommend you in the future or not recommend you or never ever talk to you again. What they mean is like, don't be angry at them.
Don't burn any bridges.
Yeah, don't burn any bridges.
So here's my problem with that. I also have a job to do at a wedding, and there are some coordinators that are awesome and work with photographers and clients to make the experience seamless. And then there are coordinators who make the day about them and feel like they have to be, I mean, a lot of the times they're really trying to be helpful, but there are many times where they like either ruin photos or totally screw us over by cutting down the time. So, I mean, obviously don't get in fights and be rude, because that should never ever happen. But definitely stand up for yourself, and you know, if you need more time, just do it. Like, you have to fight for that extra time sometimes, and you know, politely ask for some extra time, and it should be fine. Yep. What's the next one?
Don't wear low-rise pants.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to be showing
both men and women.
Yeah, yeah. No plumber's cracks. And the last one is don't try to be the life of the party.
Isn't it the same as like dancing?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, I don't love this article. I feel like it's like too much like telling people what to do, and I think people should make their own judgment about things.
Well, I think some of the things, like I think like the lady who has a few glasses of wine at dinner, I think she's never, in the comments, has never thought about the potential ramifications for that.
That's true.
You know, and is, you know, completely sober. It's not any issue, but hadn't thought through. So I think there's some interesting discussion that comes out of it, and it was kind of fun to go through. But
use common sense.
Use common sense and be prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about that in those wedding videos, and we should do some more wedding videos in the future.
Okay, so reader questions.
Reader questions. You've got one right there.
Yeah, so this is by Ali Shadpour. Talking about Sony, do you think the depth of field is the same on full-frame DSLR and a full-frame mirrorless? Please talk about exposure compensation. Where do we need it? Can it be fixed in Lightroom or any other post-processing software? Where do you use it the most? Landscape, etc. I'm not really sure what the what this question is asking.
There's two parts. There's two completely different questions there.
Okay.
Question one is the depth of field the same in a Sony mirrorless full frame versus, let's say, a Canon or Nikon full frame?
It is not.
Really?
The depth of field?
The depth of field, full frame.
Oh, wait. Sorry, I thought it meant crop mirrorless meant like micro four thirds.
No.
I missed the full frame part.
Full frame.
Yeah, it is the same because it's the same size sensor.
Sensor sizes are basically the same. As long as they're the same and you're shooting at the same aperture, your depth of field and the ability to control it is going to be the same, which really is that sensor size, which controls, and aperture, which controls your depth of field. Second part is exposure compensation. So remember, when you go to take a picture, the camera is metering the scene, and the camera's brain is deciding how bright or dark the scene should be. And it's always going for that 18% gray value. I was looking around for a gray card, but down here. And so there are times, we're going to be pretty brief with this answer. There are times where, let's say you're shooting snow. The camera is going to want to underexpose that and make it grayish. So you are going to need to use your brain to say, hey, this is bright snow, and I want it to be white, not gray. So I need to tell the camera to compensate your exposure and go a little bit brighter than the camera would normally.
And this is when you're using a semi-automatic mode.
This is when you're using semi-automatic mode. So, if you're in manual mode, you just adjust your shutter speed or your aperture so that you see your little exposure meter is above.
And yes, it can be fixed in post-processing using Lightroom or Photoshop or any other editing tools.
Right. If you shoot JPEG, kind of. If you shoot RAW, you have more latitude. That's one of the benefits of shooting RAW.
So yeah, you can. But definitely don't use that as an excuse to be careless about your shooting.
Yeah.
And then lastly, I can't tell you where I use it the most because I feel like, or where would we use it the most?
Exposure compensation?
Yeah, it depends. You know, portraits or landscapes, it really, I know that sounds like a lame answer, but it really truly depends.
Yeah,
like, is somebody wearing a white clothing? Are you shooting a snowy landscape? You know, it depends. I
think it's going to depend on when you're looking at a scene and thinking about the value, the brightness value of that scene, and the camera makes it middle 18% gray, do you want it to be a little bit darker than that or a little bit brighter than that? And that's when you use that.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. We got a couple questions over here. Frank wants to know thoughts on pixel counts, and we had mentioned this back a few
what kind of
moments ago. All right, so why do these like really expensive Canons and Nikons have fairly low? Well, actually, the Nikon D80's got a 3600 pixel or 36 megapixel count. That's okay. 1D5, it's got 16 megapixels versus the Nikon D800 with 36 megapixels.
The 1D5?
Yeah, that's what he said. Is that what it is? I think he's right.
No, it's...
Is it different?
1DS, I think he means. I don't believe there's a 1D5. But anyway, so I think, and actually...
Oh, he means the 1D Mark V.
Oh, 1D Mark V.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's actually an older camera.
Yeah.
That's an older.
So
we should be comparing it to the 1DX.
Yeah, right. Which is... And they're different manufacturers, so let's talk...
I'm sorry.
They're different manufacturers, so let's compare it to the 5D, for example. Or what is the high-end...
The D800 should be compared to the 5D Mark III.
Right.
Those are kind of at the comparable level.
Yeah.
It's the D4, D4S that should be compared against the 1DX.
Yeah, and what are the megapixels on the D4? And I'm pretty sure it's fewer megapixels than...
16 megapixels.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
And the 1DX.
And this is this is probably going to be a little bit of a lame answer because I'm not totally, well versed on all of the technology and the intricacies of it, but I believe that one of the amazing features that these super high end, meaning the 1DX or the or the D4, is that they have incredibly amazing low light capabilities. Yeah. And so...
The 1DX is 18 megapixels. So those two are similar.
So, right. So the lower megapixel count allows for that. How exactly, I'm not totally sure.
We're getting into the physics of the size of the pixels on the sensor. They got more room, more light gathering abilities.
Right, exactly, yeah. And that is not to say that these other cameras have crappy low light capability, because they don't, and that's why you pay, thousands of dollars for them. But it's not as it's definitely, the low light capabilities are not comparable to the higher end cameras. Right. So so that's why. And again, I mean, I think Toby, you explained it. I think that's why, because the smaller, you can cram a lot more quality into fewer megapixels. Yeah. So. And
we've touched on this in the past, so we're going to move on just a second. But excuse me, just because like the Nokia with 40 megapixels doesn't mean it's better than something with a 16 megapixels, because of the low light abilities and the bigger size of the pixels. Another benefit of being able to shoot at a smaller file size or smaller megapixels.
Higher frame rate.
Higher frame rate, yeah. That 1DX, 14 frames per second.
And that's really what these cameras are made for sports photography. Yeah, it really does sounds incredibly fast. Yep. And that's what these cameras are made for. And that's why their sensors are smaller, because it wouldn't be able to save onto a card quickly enough. Yep. The buffer would run out really quickly. So my legs are falling asleep, so let's wrap this up.
Our legs are falling asleep, so we need to wrap this up. We have just
they have been falling asleep. Okay. I've now just...
Aaron wants to know about Magic Lantern. What's our opinion of Magic Lantern? Because on the T4i, using Magic Lantern would give her Kelvin white balance. So Aaron, I don't have a T4i anymore. I only have the T5i, and they only have nightly builds. And last night I tried to install it. I spent about 15 minutes. It was really unhappy. So I can't say anything about directly on the T5i or T4i, but Magic Lantern in general is a custom firmware that if there's a stable build offered for your camera, and there is for the T4i, it's quite easy to install.
It's not permanent.
It's not permanent, that's right. And the user interface is fairly rough. It's not very polished, even in the stable builds, but it does give you a
Amazing.
huge range of features, including things that, you know, Canon would be nice that they left out there, like Kelvin white balance. And Kelvin white balance is pretty handy. We use it
a lot.
That's being able to set the actual, dial in the actual temperature.
Yeah.
But you do have the ability on the T5i to shoot a white card. So if you didn't want to go Magic Lantern route, you could shoot a white card and get the same.
And get a custom white balance.
Custom white balance via that method.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in general, I'd say try it out. It's really hard to actually hurt your camera. Like last night, my camera got into a loop that was stuck because I don't know why. And just pulled the battery and it was fine.
Yeah.
All right. We've got these questions about backups. Manu asks about what's a good NAS, network accessed storage, that they can use for backups. We had a couple people. Roy nicely responded. Synology is Roy's. That's what we've looked at as well. You ended up going with a Drobo system.
Yeah, well, because I thought I could edit right from the Synology, and that doesn't help me. I need something that I can work right off of. That's quick enough.
Why couldn't you edit off? It was too slow.
No. Yeah, I couldn't connect directly to my computer because it's a NAS. So you have to connect it through a network.
But your Drobo is connected directly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can also, there's a different Drobo that I use for backup that it's more of a NAS.
Yeah. And so Drobo, that's another one. But I really like Synology.
The Synology is a really good value, and you can, like, you know, you can start with small size drives and then upgrade as memory gets cheaper. You can get like a 5/8 bay for about the same amount of money as a Drobo. It's not as plug and play as the Drobos are, so you do have to do a little bit more customization, but it's not really that hard, and I think it's totally worth it.
Yeah, we got Devin and Frank on here echoing and saying the Synology. They love them. The admin interface is really sweet.
Yeah.
It's nice. Yep. All right. And that's Shrivanathna wants to know some best practices for backup apart from Time Machine. We've covered this.
Yeah, we have.
I'll write back to you.
Post a link to the video when we talked about it.
But yeah, it's trouble. Okay, Sam wants to know if we ever having trouble seeing the screen in bright sunlight. And
all the time.
And trying to figure out, well, how do you know if you're getting a good exposure then?
You look at your histogram.
Yeah, good.
In fact, you should never look at the screen to look for brightness, because it is never accurate based on the light level, based on, well, mostly just the light level, but it changes. Like if you have your camera close to your face or away from your face, like the light level is going to change, so you can't really know for sure whether the exposure is right. Always look at your histogram. Another reason to look at your histogram is you will not be paying attention to the actual picture that's chimping. You'll just look at your histogram. Okay, I'm not clipping highlights, I'm not clipping shadows, and then just keep shooting. And that's really helpful.
Yes, and I have a link to explaining how to read your histogram. It's done in Lightroom, but that histogram that's in Lightroom is the same that's shown on the back of your camera. You press info button a couple of times when you're looking at a picture on your camera, and it will cycle through these different views, and one will give you a small version of the picture with a histogram. Good. Eric wants to know, when performing micro adjustments on the 70D, do you need to take the crop factor into account when determining the distance that you need to place your target away?
I have no idea.
You are supposed to. You're supposed to take into account the crop factor, but remember, it's a variable distance they give you. It's somewhere between like 12 to 15 feet for most lenses, normal lenses that you're doing. So, yes. Roger wants to see and hear a discussion about using macro lenses with the 70D. They have a project, he has a project that he's working on of photographing old pictures instead of scanning. He thought that this would be a faster method, but what he's finding is that something like you got the 60. You've got the 60 millimeter macro, but on the 70D with a crop factor, that's what, like 100, almost 100? So it's very long, and now you're finding you need to be very far away from the picture to get it. I'll tell you this, Roger. I did this exact thing with slides a couple years ago. Instead of running them through this ancient old slide scanner, I set up a light table. A 100 millimeter macro is exactly what I used, and it was very, very fast. Again, Roy commented and had a suggestion of getting the camera up high, between use a board and two ladders, or a longer tripod. Gosh, you could even put something custom on the wall that you could just slide a little picture into, something that would hold it temporarily.
Yeah.
And then just shoot new one, shoot.
Just put it down, or putting down on the floor too. You know, setting it up on the floor.
Yeah.
Make sure you have good light.
Yeah, your light needs to be very even.
Yeah, I don't know if you were doing, like, how much energy and resources you want to put into this, but if you get a color balance light bulb, you probably can get pretty good light and pretty accurate color balance, so the pictures look, the color of the pictures look pretty accurate. Yeah. So think about that. And
there's scanning services too. If you're looking at this and thinking about it, maybe, but you bought the 60, so you probably don't want to go with any of the scanning services now.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, yeah, I do think that's the best way to. That's a good way to go though.
Yeah. Hey, I think that's it. Oh, Mano says, why don't you use some macro extension tubes with your current lens? We've talked about those in the past too. They can be...
that actually would work if you have a static setup.
That's true.
So, and that's really the way to do it. Like, I wouldn't just grab the camera and because that would just take forever. Like, set it up on a tripod that's high up enough.
Yeah.
And just leave it set up like that and just put one... Yeah. Just switch them.
But he's got the 60 now.
Right.
Do the ladder trick, or just don't use a copy stand, but build something custom. Watch out for reflections. Yeah. Even lighting.
Yep.
Good.
Well, that's it.
Hey, that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. Oh, we got to pick our Flickr picks of the week. Here they are. Oh, and I think I'm going to pick our next assignment. I'm going to do it right now.
Do it.
And this was suggested by Bill. Bill has an assignment: show or convey movement, but no waterfalls. That would be too easy.
Okay.
I liked it. And I think it's going to tie in. I would like to get a panning how-to video up in a week or two. So we're going to make this assignment probably 2 weeks, starting about now. Go find some way to convey motion. And a blog post is coming. Thank you, Bill. That's a good suggestion. There were other good suggestions, but that one I just like that one because you really have to think about your shutter speed. And I really like these assignments that make you think about your camera settings.
Yeah.
A little more so than some of the other ones, where like shoot something yellow. Okay?
Great.
Good?
Yeah.
Thanks so much for watching. Till next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.